What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
And my name is Dave.
And this is the Deep Dive. And here in the month of November, we're really focusing on the word gratitude, this path to gratitude. I think the sermon you preached yesterday was gratitude in the middle of the storm, which I think is a very huge topic for us to kind of really think through, because I know when Paul talks about it, and I think we'll get to that, but it's always like, dude, you're crazy. Why would we be grateful in the middle of that?
Sure.
But
well,
I'm ready.
It's easier to be grateful when
things are good.
Things are good. So how do we do that? That's the whole focus of yesterday, was how do we focus when things are not so good? Because we're all going to go through those times. So we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to get into it. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, Dave, like we said, we're not a sports podcast, but we do like to talk a little bit of sports. How about them dogs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a great game on Saturday in Texas. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that they're still alive, and that makes it interesting.
Yeah,
and
gives us something to root for.
I think we're talking about it so much now is because it's been such a good year for college football in particularly. So, that's been fun. So, so we'll just continue to plug away.
So root and hope for the best and all that good stuff. And hopefully they keep peaking, and, hopefully there's room to grow still.
Sure.
And I know Kirby would say that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Dave, jump into it. Why don't we're talking about gratitude here in the storm, and how do we do that?
Okay. Well, the first week, this is called the Path to Gratitude, and we're in this month of November, which is leading up to Thanksgiving, and I'm doing my best to try to keep the seasons separated because everywhere else it looks like Christmas. But Thanksgiving is coming, and so we think about that a lot in this month. And so the path to gratitude is where we should be walking all the time, but particularly we think about it a lot here in November. And so the first week, I talked mostly about sort of the practical, everyday thankfulness, little things. But, it is, I think, necessary to talk about how do we practice gratitude when we're not feeling very grateful, when things aren't going very well, when, anything from just minor annoyances to, really difficult, traumatic life events that happen at some point to every single one of us. And so we talked about gratitude in the storm yesterday. That was the title of the sermon. And I used as my primary text Paul's book of Philippians, although we didn't read the whole book.
Right.
But just these 4 little chapters are just so packed full, particularly of things like joy and contentment and peace. But a big part of that, and all those things are interrelated.
Yeah.
It's hard to be grateful if we're not content.
Yeah.
So those things are very much related. But I mentioned in the sermon, and I'll mention again here, that Paul writes this while he is in prison.
Yeah. Probably chained to a post somewhere or something.
He was chained to a Roman guard 24 hours a day.
Which is wild to think like that. Yeah. He's talking about these things like joy and all this stuff in the middle of that.
Yeah, it just kind of it permeates throughout this whole thing. And the book of Philippians, we're very familiar with because we use a lot of the lines from it, like in our hymns and our praise choruses and that sort of things. It's typically, people have like a little picture up in their kitchen or something. Many times it'll be like a line from Philippians. And so there's so many great points to pull out of it. But if you just look at it as a whole, which is very easy to do, to read through probably 15 or 20 minutes to read the whole book, you see this whole theme. And one of the reason I thought about it in relation to Thanksgiving and gratitude is he has this one line: do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving present your requests to God. And so I do feel like that really, it kind of hinges on Thanksgiving and gratitude in that. And, as I say, it's all related, all interrelated and comes to it. So, we looked at some various ways in which we see in Paul and in these texts, but how we can also apply to our everyday life, different aspects of living a grateful life. And so the first point that I think I made was that the gratitude is really what anchors us. As we're talking about being in a storm, and you can kind of think of this image of being in a boat out somewhere somewhere out in the middle of a storm.
Yeah.
That gratitude is what anchors there. And I told the story of some friends of mine who are big-time sailors, and I was talking to the husband one time, and he was relating about a really, really bad storm that they had gotten into. They really fearful that they're going to at least lose the boats, if not their lives. And so I said, well, what did you do? He said, well, you focus on what you can do. You batten down all the hatches, to use that sailor terminology. And then he says you put down your anchor.
Yeah.
Because that's something that you can do. And so you focus on those things. And so when we go through the storms of life, sometimes about all we can do is to do that, to put our anchor down.
Yep.
And to ride out the storm, the best we can. But the anchor, if you think about it, is one thing. It keeps the boat from drifting. But, just anchoring ourselves in gratitude, anchoring ourselves in contentment, anchoring ourselves in some of the other points I made in this sermon, it really kind of keeps us from drifting off to other places that we can when we're going through those times.
Yeah, I think it helps us just keep a focus on the good stuff around us, and not just focus solely on the bad thing going on right then and right there.
Well, it centers us, because if we go adrift, we can start spiraling downward.
Oh, for sure.
We can start feeling sorry for ourselves.
Yeah.
We can start the blame game of wanting somebody or something, and sometimes God, to blame for the hardships that we're going through.
Yeah.
And so anchoring ourselves in gratitude can help us from slipping off into those sort of bad places.
It was interesting. It was actually yesterday in Sunday school with the youth, we were kind of talking about this, and then actually from another spot that Paul said a similar thing. But I asked the kids, I said, why do you think it was so important for Paul to mention, to be thankful in all these situations? And that's exactly what one of the kids who rarely talks when we talk about the Bible stuff, he came out, he's like, it just helps us stay centered, so where we don't spiral out and all that good stuff. And I just thought, I was like, man, look at that. Yeah. I don't know if he listened in the sermon or what, but I was impressed.
Yeah, well, hope so. But I think so. And like some of the things, and they're actually, we talked a lot about in here about, the practices that we put into place. And I think sometimes, as simple as they are, just taking time out to think about, what do I have to be grateful for? What can I be thankful for? Those things that we can do on the good times, when we, begin and keep those same practices going in the dark days, I think it can remind us of, that God's with us, and
for sure.
we're not deserted, we're not all by ourselves. I do want to say this, and I made an issue of pointing this out. I'm not suggesting, that we're not supposed to recognize, it doesn't change this situation,
Sure.
It may change us in the situation. We go through bad things. And so this is not denying that these are hard and bad things, and trying to put on these rose-colored glasses and, and be all, prima donna kind of stuff. But it does, it does center us, I think, and stabilize us in those times.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think with the kind of staying with that anchor is that that's just such a big deal. Is there are times in life where we feel like things are so bad, and it just kind of pulls us away from some of the basics we know. And, I know, I'm assuming you as a pastor, and I know in my time with working with people and stuff like that, is just, you watch it happen from time to time where they have, people who are going through hard times just don't have something to grip onto, and it just sends them further and further down that kind of spiral, as you said.
Right.
But the ones that feel like they have that something to anchor to. It doesn't make their situation less crappy or whatever, but it does
denying
give
the pain.
Exactly, but it does give them something to like hold on to at some level.
For sure. Yeah, and I thought it was really necessary for us to do that because, I mean, this Thanksgiving, as we gather around the table, I mean, it's very easy when we're sitting at the Thanksgiving table and we're, and ideally we think about like being there with our family and, we've got all the traditional foods and all of that. And so it's very easy in those moments as we go around the table and say, what are you thankful for? To kind of look around and see. But not everybody is at that place all the time. And a lot of people, some of the people in that room aren't going to be there this Thanksgiving. A lot of them may be missing somebody that was at the table last year who's not this year. A lot of people may be facing economic hardship during the time that we're in, fearful for losing their job. Maybe they have lost a job and looking for a job. There's a lot of people that this Thanksgiving is not going to be that sort of idealistic thing that we, see on Hallmark cards and that sort of thing. So, it's important to realize God's with us there. And it's a point for us, I think, as the church to remember that we need to be there as well. But, that's all part of it, to be thankful and those kinds of things. Gratitude can lead to peace and contentment. All those kinds of things that are adjacent to Paul. You see in Paul there. He's in jail and a lot of things going bad. But yet he seems to have, I think he does have, this sort of peace and contentment. And he says that let me read this little part of the text. He says, I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I have learned the secret of being content in and every situation. And so it's interesting, the word learned, because it may not be something that comes natural to us.
Sure.
And so Paul is said that he has learned how to do it, and he is challenging the Philippians and challenging us that we need to learn that way of thinking and being as well.
I think that just reminds us to kind of be patient sometimes when we don't handle circumstances the way we feel like we should, or we might not see the good right away, but we want to. Is just to kind of say like, okay, what are some things I can put in place for the next time something happens that might bring me back to that center.
And I think there's some remembering of the times that God was with us, remembering the things that we have to be grateful for. It can help us through those storms. I use the example of David and when he was going up against Goliath, and a lot of us, if you look at some of these storms, that they're like Goliaths that we're going up against. But before he goes in, people were saying, are you nuts for taking on this Goliath? There's no way. And he said, well, I remember a time when, I was out with my sheep and I had to face a bear, and God was with me then. I remember a time when I had to face a lion and God was with me then. And so if we can remember those times that God was with us in the difficulties, that it can help us through those bad times. I was also thinking, and I used an example of Corrie ten Boom. I'll use another example I didn't about her, but she has this great saying or quote that says, you can never learn that Christ is all you need until Christ is all you have. And so, our sufficiency, the gratitude flows when we understand this sufficiency in Christ. And so, she was, and I think if you were in church yesterday, but like if you didn't know, Corrie ten Boom she survived a Nazi concentration camp. And she was not Jewish. She was Christian, but she was part of the resistance. Her family had harbored Jews. They were arrested for that, and she spent years in, a concentration camp in Germany. And so, that's what one of the big keys that she learned was the sufficiency in Christ, but it's also thankfulness in all things. While she was in those camps, she led a Bible study. And so they were living in these barracks that were just flea infested. And so she was teaching one day, possibly on this same text, about giving thanks in all things. And so she said, well, we need to give thanks in all things. We need to thank God for these fleas. And everybody's like, are you nuts?
Yeah.
But yeah, but what happened was that because they were flea infested, the Nazi guards would not come into where they were. And so that gave them the freedom to
do
study
the
Bible and have their worship services and that sort of thing. So you never know how God is working in those weird, awful times sometimes. You can trace God's hand through it,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. But, so, it is, again, going back to, this is not taking the pain away. Mm-hmm. This is not denying, if you say, this is a painful time, that other people should criticize you for recognizing it's a tough time. It is just trying to get centered, is trying to look at ways in which we can grow on this path to gratitude, even in the storms. But one thing that I did mention was that I do think it's an opportunity for the church to be empathetic and to look around and see those who are going through difficult times, in sort of the immediate future of like here at Thanksgiving, but also looking ahead at, Christmas is going to be a tough time. And so I did mention in the service that we have a thing coming up in December, on December 21st, the longest night of the year. We have for the last several years, maybe even going back before me, had something called a longest night service. And I think it's a beautiful service and a beautiful time. We invite particularly those whose family members we celebrated on All Saints, but it's opened up to anybody who may be having a tough time this holiday season, where everything else in the world is, it's all about, Merry Christmas and Christmas is coming and all the joy and merriment of that.
Right.
That it's not that for them. It's a sad time for them. And that the church can recognize that we can make a space for it, and be with those people on that night to recognize their loss, to recognize their pain, and to say that God is with us.
And that's such a, like you said, it's a beautiful service, and I think it's a beautiful thing that we can do as a community to come beside people who have lost, and because the worst thing is to feel like you're alone in your grief or in your hurt and all that stuff. So yeah, it's just beautiful.
Yeah. So anyway, that was this week's sermon, and this week we'll be finishing it out. We're looking at gratitude that overflows, leading up to Thanksgiving, the Sunday before Thanksgiving. So it'd be a good time for us to be thankful as a church.
Yeah.
And think about, communally, how we are grateful to God for all that God is doing here at Hickory Flat.
Well, thank you for that, Dave. And I think it's a great reminder for us to find ways to, even in those hard spaces, to find those spaces of gratitude, and that just kind of helps us maintain our focus and help us not get too far away from where God wants us to be and stuff like that. So, but without any further ado, Dave, where are we going after Thanksgiving? Do you want to kind of give us a little preface?
Well, it's Christmas, or really in the church calendar, the season of Advent. We're sort of in this period of waiting, leading up to Advent. And so I'm going to be using some Isaiah text. They're texts that we often hear during this season, both Advent and Christmas. But, talking about what we celebrate in Advent is the coming again, celebrating Jesus coming the first time, but also thinking about his coming again. Yeah. And so Isaiah's got some great text with some great imagery. And so we'll be working through some of those. We have lots to celebrate around here. We have a couple of big music concerts here, one by the Cherokee Chorale. And so that's a ticketed event, but it's going to be fabulous. I went there last year, and it was fantastic.
December 13th, I think, right?
Yeah, and I'm so thankful that we can host it here.
Yeah.
And then our own choir and music people will be, I think, the second Sunday. I'm not sure. Is that what Sunday is that? That's maybe earlier, 3rd or 10th. I can't remember. We should know that.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
sure.
it would be the 7th, because the 14th, I think, is a Sunday.
Yeah.
So, I think it's the one before that.
We'll be we'll be having a great day of music and great day of worship. They do that every year, and it's always well attended and just a beautiful service. So we have that, and then our Christmas Eve services and all the other holiday parties and holiday celebrations. We've got some mission projects that are going on. We're partnering with Murphy Harps to help them with some of their kids there that they work with foster kids in a very, very extreme situations there. And so, those gifts are already pouring in. Our angel tree that we did earlier for our work here with some of the Cherokee County schools with some of their kids that need help. We've already completed that, but we celebrated it on Sunday because all the gifts are bought. So, there's other ways in which we can give back during the holidays as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have any comments, anything you'd like to add, you can drop it in the comment section below on the Facebook, the YouTube, all that good stuff. And thanks for watching. You got anything to add?
Not right now.
All right.
Okay,
thanks, guys. Y'all take care.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.